Dangerfield. All right there. Now, I was browsing the internet last night and I stumbled across this video critique, Fetishizing Asian Women, the World of Suzie Wong. Now, being a literary figure, being a man of letters, obviously I discovered the World of Suzie Wong years ago because it's the name of a brothel in Patong. And with that sentence, I hope I've adequately let you know what side of the political fence I sit on when it comes to this Orientalism nonsense. So let's deep dive into Suzie Wong. let's deep dive into the world of Suzie Wong, see what he's got to say and see what I've got to say. Let's go. Boing. Oh wow, did you hear the brass then? Ba ba ba, the majesty of the colonial ship there in port. Ba 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 ba, let's have that again. But it all turns out lovely again. Oh my gosh, she's delicious. Oh, sorry, am I fetishizing Asian women by daring to be a white man who found a picture of an Asian woman attractive? Sorry, I won't do it again. Continue. Oh, well, hello, Suzie. A gin and tonic, perhaps? Oh, cheeky. Wow, these Asian chicks are really submissive.
The World of Suzie Wong was released in 1960 and is a fun British-American produced romance.
Fun.
About Suzie Wong, played by Nancy Kwan, who's a Chinese sex worker based in the Wan Chai district of Hong Kong, and Robert Lomax, played by William Holden, an American trying to start a new career as a painter. When he arrives in Hong Kong, he encounters Suzie, who pretends to be a virtuous daughter of a wealthy businessman. Lomax sees Suzie coming out of a hotel in Wan Chai and rents a room there, unaware that this is where Chinese prostitutes take their white clients.
Unaware. I've been unaware in that situation thousands of times.
And thus, slowly a romance develops. The film was adapted from the stage play by Paul Osborne, which itself was based on the 1957 novel.
That's the original, by the way. That's the original source material, The World of Suzie Wong by Richard Mason.
By Richard Mason, which I'm going to be referencing a lot too. This video is already off topic, as the film I'm focusing on and the book it was based on aren't East Asian. However, as I'm white, British and a man who dedicates a lot of my time looking at films from the East, especially Hong Kong, I think it's sometimes useful to explore the perceptions of these places and their people from my own historical and social cultural lens. This gives people like myself the opportunity to understand, or even simply acknowledge, certain biases or assumptions I have about somewhere like Hong Kong due to the culture I was raised in, which will undoubtedly affect the way I read into the films produced from these places, especially regarding, in the case of this video, women. Now it's important to note, I'm not trying to demonise the film or book, or get them cancelled, or even score so-called woke points.
Well, if you have to say it.
Whatever that means. I'm just attempting to show that it provides us with a useful insight into the development of how East and Southeast Asian women are viewed from Western eyes.
Oh really? It provides a useful insight on how all East and Southeast Asian women are perceived from all Western eyes. Well, no, obviously not. So that leaves us with some South and Southeast Asian women and how they were perceived by some people's eyes. And that is a very important distinction, which I've no doubt will elaborate on later.
Specifically, how it reflects what Peter Kwan framed the construction of the Oriental woman.
Oh, good Lord. And there you go. Whose construction? What colonial? The colonial construction, that group. What year was that? How, you know, this is such a scant idea, the whole Orientalism thing. You know, who? Where are you looking? Where are you getting your sources from? Because if you look in a certain direction, you'll find a certain thing. But there's plenty of literature and cinema that contradicts what other people have said, which means your argument cannot stand up. But again, we'll get into that.
Which for him was a fictional character of the Western imagination.
Oh, so what you're saying is the creative work has got an element of fiction about it. Whew. I mean, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, you've just blown my mind. This is crazy. I thought everything I read and saw about another country was real.
The so-called Oriental woman seen in Western production.
So-called? Are they not Oriental women? So-called European women.
And literature was so much a part of the Western imagination, and by contrast, so far away from the realities of these actual women.
How do you know that? How do you know that? And again, what? Every representation was so far away from every one of those women. You're going to stick in the mud on that, are you? That's the mountain you're going to die on, because that's ridiculous.
That it exists as its own separate abstraction.
Oh, it's just a myth. It's a mythology. Well, for someone who's been travelling out to Southeast Asia for the last 20 odd years and who's lived out here for the last 5 years, I think you'll be very surprised how much many of these mythologies actually line up with real events. Imagine. Awful, eh? I mean, sorry, leftards, but your critique is bullshit.
So when I use the phrase Oriental woman, I'm not actually referring to East and Southeast Asian women, but a fictional projection.
Look how sorry he is. No, look, sorry, I don't mean Oriental women, because that's bad. I mean, you know, one that was made up by unspecified people of an unspecified time, because, well, I've got this one film, but I suppose that'll do, won't it?
Of Western white men's idea of them.
All Western white men's ideas? All of them? Or maybe the writer of Suzie Wong? Who knows?
The Oriental woman traditionally has certain characteristics. She's meek, shy,
Oh, really? All right. Meek? And while we're talking about sex workers here, meek, passive and shy? Sure, yeah. And traditional, what? That's a confusing word. Do you mean traditional in terms of they are in their traditions, or traditional in terms of this peculiar lens you're looking through that you've constructed out of one movie? It's just ridiculous.
Passive, childlike, innocent, and naive.
Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of Southeast Asian sex workers. Yeah, innocent, naive, yeah, shy, yeah. That's the character type that gets into that work for sure. Childlike. I don't even know what that means. What, they're small? They tend to be genetically petite. What an analysis.
When referring to the Oriental woman and their romantic...
You know that shy, meek, naive, passive woman who lied to a bloke who come out of an airport and said she was the daughter of a rich businessman? Yeah, her. His own object of analysis has already crumbled his analysis. And I'll tell you why, because he's not really looking at the World of Suzie Wong to make his points. he's looking at the works of people like Stuart Hall, Edward Said et al., the CCCS, the Centre of Contemporary Cultural Studies, the Birmingham School, where all this nonsense came about because a load of immigrants had massive chips on their shoulders that white men, quite a lot of white men, found Southeast Asian and Chinese women quite attractive. Oh, the evil bastards. Imagine fancying someone. Interestingly, you never hear about it the other way round, that Southeast Asian and Chinese women quite fancy European men as well. That's a fact. Not all of them, but a lot of them. In my 20 years out here, that's their preference. Almost everyone I've spoken to. Now, are they trying to keep me happy because I happen to be white European? No. I've seen it in bars. I've seen it when the Chinese men come in, or when the Thai men come in, or when the Africans come in. I've seen the different response they get. But anyway, continue with your maintaining of fictional mythologies.
Relationships with white men in Hollywood films, Gina Marchetti described them as being often depicted as sexually available to the white hero.
Oh, awful. Imagine a woman being sexually available to a white hero. Where's the problem with that? That doesn't mean they're not sexually available to brown heroes. That doesn't mean they're not potentially sexually available to black heroes. They just didn't make this film. They just didn't write those books. What's wrong with being sexually available? You know that women are sexually available. Do you know, and I'm going to blow your mind, mate, do you know that men are sexually available? I mean, you can argue that, but, you know, there's still people being born and that, and, you know. Look at that quote. Whoa. Well, these Southeast Asian women are often depicted as being sexually available to white men. The horror.
And due to her being an invention of the Western imagination, is ultimately dependent on the white hero to satisfy her most basic needs.
What? The white hero who, if according to your analysis, must also be an invention, what about his getting his most basic needs satisfied? Yeah, this works two ways, but, you know, fuck him because he's a white man. Let's concentrate on the victim here.
And to perform essential
the meek, shy, passive, childlike victim.
tasks, it's unavoidable not to associate this.
I saw it coming. I haven't watched this. Go and look him up yourself. It's just nonsense. I mean, basically, Edward Said rediscovered semiotics that was already there. He found it. Look, if you want to understand Edward Said's contribution to thought in the 20th century, read Roland Barthes' Mythologies but drunk. Or, if you're not a drinker, read it but skip every other page. That's kind of what he said. So weak.
With Edward Said's concept of Orientalism, where, within this context, writers and artists view themselves and their subject matter within sexist binders.
Really? No, Edward. Let's just hear that again. Let's just hear Edward's critique here.
Writers and artists view themselves and their subject matter within sexist binders.
Writers and artists view themselves and their subject matter within sexist binders. You know, you write a story about falling in love with an Oriental prostitute, you're in a sexist binder. It can't just be romantic, can't just be sexual, can't just be, as he himself said, fun. No, it's a sexist binder. Whatever that means.
This was common in the writings of travellers and novelists.
Why was it though? What, you reckon they all went out there, experienced the world, and then made a load of lies up? You've got to ask yourself why it was common. Maybe, I mean, I'm just, grasping at straws here, clutching at straws. Maybe they had those experiences and that's what they wrote about. Imagine.
Where women are the creatures of male power fantasies.
Yes, yeah. And oh, sorry, that's evil, isn't it? I forgot about the Brave New World. Sorry, mate. Sorry, I keep silly me.
And led to people like Peter Kwan arguing that this could explain why the white hero finds the Oriental woman extremely sexually desirable.
Of course, it had to be something dark, didn't it? Not just because maybe he fancied her. Maybe he finds her very, very physically attractive. Because male sexuality is so much about appearances.
Because she was essentially created exactly for this.
Well, hang on, but so the writers and artists and filmmakers went out there, experienced it, and then made something up that had nothing to do or very little to do with their experiences. What, like as a fantasy? Why would they do that? You don't even need to travel out there to do that.
Kwan writes, this racial sexual fetish.
Racial sex. Why is it a fetish? Why can't it just be this sexuality? That's all it is. Sexuality. Where's? I mean, it's amazing that the left always go on about the racism, everything's racist, blah blah blah. But no, you bring race into it. This is just sexual. It just so happens that the bloke's in China and the woman's Chinese. It's just sexual, just sexy. Nothing wrong with being sexy.
Is often cast and recast in colonialist terms that reinforce the subjugation of the Oriental woman.
What subjugation? What? The woman who lied to the bloke when he got off the aeroplane? The woman that is getting paid by being a prostitute? What is this subjugation? Where is it? Let's read the subjugation of the Oriental woman.
And posit her as an object for Western consumption.
What? That seems like one hell of a leap. A few films and books about blokes going out to the Orient and having sex. Suddenly, they are now posited as an object for Western consumption. Well, isn't that the same as all representation? Isn't that the same of all cinema? Doesn't cinema posit objects for consumption? Yeah, it does. Oh, but suddenly, when it's sexual, there's an issue. Suddenly, when it's interracial, there's another issue. It almost seems like these people want to keep all the races apart. Almost seems like they don't want interbreeding. Yeah, that's weird for the left, isn't it?
And the satisfaction of Western desires.
Yeah, this analysis just completely ignores the woman. It's a satisfaction of Western desires. She got nothing out of it. I mean, Suzie Wong may as well have just been a slave. She was just used. He landed there, grabbed her by the throat, took her to bed, fucked her a few times and threw her out like a dirty rag. She had no agency and she got nothing out of it. I mean, talk about erasure. Talk about, these lunatics who write this kind of stuff think they're sticking up, think they're waving their virtue flag so high, hoping the whole world sees it, to protect these women who they've essentially erased from their own existence. Nice people.
The Oriental woman is therefore available to satisfy desires that would normally otherwise be socially and morally unacceptable if acted upon the bodies of white women.
What? Just what? I'll read that again. I'm sorry that it's clipped in a bad way, but listen to this line. The Oriental woman is therefore, i.e. the nonsense above it makes this obvious, right? The Oriental woman is therefore available to satisfy desires, sexual, that would normally otherwise be socially and morally unacceptable if acted upon the bodies of white women. Rubbish. Are you honestly suggesting that the idea was to present someone that men could travel out to Asia and get kinky because white women don't like it? White women is just missionary, head in the pillow. Just a nonsense. And again, are you talking about every white woman? Are they all the same? Are you talking about every Oriental woman? Are they all the same? It doesn't make any sense. This is hogwash. This is just pie in the sky nonsense, and it's had the opposite effect of what it intended. It's completely removed agency and the desires and needs of the Oriental woman. Nah, fuck them. They don't have a part to play in this. No. You know, I know the book and the movie is called The World of Suzie Wong, but no, she's got nothing to do with it. It's all about male sexual desires that they can't get back home. It's absurd.
This is why there's a deep history of the Oriental woman being used to permit taboo desires like...
What the fuck? Taboo desires?
Paedophilia.
What the fuck? Oh, I wonder what Mr. Edward Said, Stuart Hall et al. Have said about the millions, the potentially millions of young underage girls that were raped in the UK. Have they know about desires that they can't fulfil back home? Did that ever? No, they've been very quiet about all that, haven't they? Carry on. Paedophilia, drop that in.
Sexual aggression and violence.
White men are going out to the Orient to rape women. I've seen The World according to Suzie Wong.
Something that was not reserved solely for the white woman within a colonial context. We can see this sexual exclusivism in the old British colonial censorship practices in Hong Kong, where it was emphasised that...
That is such a cheap shot. We'll hear it out though.
The white woman must not be sexualised in front of Chinese audiences, yet Chinese women were not focused on in this way.
Right, so this is what it says. Any film, this is a censorship, part of the censorship in Hong Kong. Any film showing indecency. This is extended to mean the depiction of white women in indecorous garb or positions or situations which would tend to discredit our womenfolk with the Chinese. Yep, sounds very pompous and sounds very exceptionalist. Yeah, I get that. But that was 1928. 1928. The novel, The World of Suzie Wong, was written in 1957, if I remember rightly, and the movie came out in 1960. So that's a terrible cheap shot. Trying to suggest there's any synchronicity when there's actually 30 odd years in between. 30 very significant years in terms of cultural change at that.
I explore this in my 5 Weird Hong Kong Censorship Practices video, so if you want a more detailed dive into that, check that video out. Mark Hampton wrote an amazing chapter called A Man's Playground in his book, which provides a detailed account of how Hong Kong was essentially treated like a leisurely gentleman's club.
Okay, right. What, like cities all around the world were? Okay.
In the book, he shows how British commentators imagine Hong Kong as a site of unbridled capitalism, which...
Yeah, but it was. That was part of the deal with the Chinese and why the English got hold of it. It was a special zone. It was. That's not imagined.
Contrasted with the dreary welfare state of post-World War II Britain.
Yeah, but the people who went out to engage in the unbridled capitalism of Hong Kong, I doubt they were in the working class, the dreary working class welfare states area of England. No, they would have been in London, which was a gentleman's playground. And who do gentlemen play with in these playgrounds? Women. But, of course, it's not a women's playground. They've got no agency. They don't get anything out of it. No, they're just like slaves.
But alongside the glorification of entrepreneurship,
The glorification of entrepreneurship. Oh yeah, I mean, if there's one thing we don't want to glorify in the modern world, it's entrepreneurship. I mean, no. I mean, that's quite amazing, because don't forget, Edward Said, Stuart Hall and all that crowd, they're all Marxists. And, you know, when I talked about the Stuart Hall's thing, the CCCS, the Contemporary Centre for Cultural Studies, all that project was how to stuff as much Marxist nonsense into the education system as possible. I know it because I've done a master's degree in cultural studies 20 odd years ago, which was part of that whole Birmingham School cultural studies thing. And it's just a Marxist boot camp. The glorification of entrepreneurialism. Oh, God. Oh, how awful.
was a place where men could play.
Evil, again. The entrepreneurialism, enjoying themselves. This is shocking stuff.
In particular, it entailed the vision that Hong Kong was a sexual playground for the British man.
What, with each other? Was it one great big gay city? Or I don't know, I guess they might have played with women who also got something out of it, who also enjoyed it. You can't have a heterosexual male playground without heterosexual females,
which was characterised by its easy access to Asian women. John Tosh argued that empire was seen as a projection of masculinity, and as Claire Midgley noted,
yeah, the empire was seen as a projection of masculinity. Was seen. What that means is that whoever wrote that, I can't remember who he said, viewed it like that. Okay, right. I mean, let's face it, a hot dog can be seen as a projection of masculinity, but, you know, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
British imperialism was essentially a masculine project.
Oh no, awful. more terrible stuff. All those men who's got in those boats and sailed round the world. Terrible. I mean, more entrepreneurialism. Ban it.
The operation of the British Empire and Victorian expansion was, according to Ronald Haim,
part of the tradition of the world, which had always been run and led by empires, yeah. And out of all those empires, I think you'll find the British Empire was without doubt the finest. That's a fact. You know, the one that put an end to slavery, yeah.
Underpinned with sexual dynamics.
What isn't underpinned with sexual dynamics? You know, we live in a world that is underpinned with sexual dynamics. Now, if you sail a ship to another country and park up there, yeah, there'll be sexual dynamics there as well, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. Do you know what it makes it? A human thing.
And a territory like Hong Kong provided British men sexual opportunities that would not have been readily available in Britain.
Sure. What, in 1960s Britain men couldn't get laid? Ridiculous.
The trope of Hong Kong being a sexual decadence wasn't just familiar to those living there, but also British people living at home, as it became a common theme in text aimed for them. However, it was overwhelmingly masculinist. Masculinist. I mean, that's how desperate this is getting. It was overwhelmingly masculinist. You know, this book and movie called The World of Suzie Wong. It doesn't get more overwhelmingly masculinist than that. European female sexuality was hardly ever depicted when it came to Hong Kong.
Well, yeah, because why would you? That's not a very interesting story. If you travel to Hong Kong and meet a Western woman, well, you know, you can write that story in London. You know, the thing is, this is all built on such fragile foundations that anything you put on top of it is equally contradictory and fragile.
and the sexualizing of Asian women.
Women, okay, don't sexualize women. What happens then? There's no sex. You know, let me tell you something. Asian women sexualize themselves, and this is make sure no one's listening. Western women sexualize themselves. Western men sexualize themselves. We're a sexual fucking species.
Was essentially normalized.
As opposed to the bizarre unlikelihood that Asian women had a sex life. I mean, no.
Overt criticism of men who discreetly enjoy Asian mistresses and sex workers was also rare. Mark Hampton cites a segment by historian Jan Morris.
Oh, Jan Morris! Let's see I'll tell you a little bit about Jan Morris after we hear what nonsense he's got to say.
Where they talk about the male experience in Hong Kong. From the beginning, Hong Kong seems to have been more prurient even than most such colonial settlements, partly because of the climate perhaps, partly because European males have always been attracted to nubile Chinese females.
Do you know what nubile means? Nubile means sexually attractive and of marriage age. But drop it in there because a lot of people, it's got kind of negative connotations. But look it up. There's nothing wrong with someone being nubile. It just means they're sexy. So the problem here is partly because European men have always been attracted. Well, hang on a minute. You were telling us that this was mythological. You were telling us not so long ago that it was these tropes in books and cinema. But then we've got Jan Morris telling us that partly because European men have always been attracted by nubile Chinese females. Well, I'm sure they weren't when they hadn't known about them, but maybe it only happened when they went there, which is why this happened.
Partly because the early settlers were often men of vigorous appetite.
I mean, colonialism is masculinist. Really? Men have vigorous sexual appetites. And you know what? So do women. And flexible morals. Do you know morality is flexible, right, Jan?
And flexible morals. And partly because the air of Hong Kong somehow seems to suggest that in sex, as with most other things, anything goes.
Partly because the air. This is how strong this analysis is. Because the air of Hong Kong somehow seems to suggest that in sex, as most other things, anything goes. Where are you getting this information from, Jan Morris, who used to be James Morris? Jan Morris is a transgender writer who is not in the least bit embittered by those beautiful Oriental women and has got no problem with continually erasing them from their own lives whatsoever.
This theme of the availability of Asian women...
A theme of the I mean, write a film or a book about America. And you know, if it involves men and women, there'll usually be a theme of the availability of women. Because women are available. And if women are available, that means that men are having sex with them. Which means the men are available. So this theme of women being available must always already include men being available, and that's going to happen anywhere where there's men and women. This is not specific to Asia, Southeast Asia. This is nonsense.
Was intersected with another motive.
Intersected. I mean, we really should have done left-hard bingo with this. We'd have done 20 of them already, but I'd never have thought to put masculinist on it.
Motif associated with Hong Kong, commercialism, and was present in many books, journalistic accounts, memoirs, and letters in the post-war era. In Hong Kong, sexual delights, like everything else, was for sale.
Like it always has been all around the world.
Whether it be through prostitution or a mistress with a Hong Kong woman who's living in poverty. A motivation behind Suzie Wong's availability is feeding her young child.
Yeah, most people work to feed themselves and often their families, yeah. I mean, prostitution is just another example of wage labour. It's just a specific example of wage labour, which you could consider a problem if you want, but why that's any different from any other wage labour, I don't know. I mean, maybe you're a prude, it's hard to say.
Which resonates with the Anna character.
Or maybe because most leftards are completely screwed up and damaged when it comes to sexuality.
In Donald Moore's The Striking Wind, a Hong Kong seductress who turns to prostitution to pay for her parents' medical bills and escape the living conditions of desperate poverty. Missionary Jackie Pullinger also observed the connections between poverty and sex work in 1960s Hong Kong.
Oh, well done. What a link to make. I mean, that's incredible. You know what I've just done? I've made a link towards work and poverty. You know, if you don't do one, you're probably going to get the other. Unless, of course, you're living in a dreary welfare state and you can get the money without the work.
Hong Kong, and how this often compromised the agency of the woman.
yeah, sure.
She refers to a mother who sold her daughter.
Look at the picture. Oh my God, what's he saying? Here we go, hang on.
Compromised the agency of the woman. She refers to a mother who sold her daughter to a pimp due to her husband leaving and there being no social security payments in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I've got a funny feeling there was a lot more going on in Hong Kong and China around the same time that you're not telling us around selling daughters. But, you know, crack on. Maybe I'm wrong.
But then again, the commercial availability of Asian women...
What? And that isn't the same in the West, no? American women, you know, all those homeless blokes, all those blokes with no money, they always get the top birds, don't they? They always get the higher status women. Or is the case that women tend to partner up in status and money? Yeah, maybe you should have thought about that very fundamental truth of all societies.
Was also due to local women being attracted to the finer things that their class and social status could never provide them with. As the narrator in the book, the great Hong Kong sex novel states...
This looks like a great piece of work to get your argument from. The great Hong Kong sex novel. Amazing. I can't believe I haven't read it. I've clipped it off the screen, but it says, The Rise and Fall of a Hong Kong Chauvinist, no less.
It was hard for a good girl with a bad job to dress reasonably in Hong Kong.
What point are you making here? Good Lord.
We see this with Suzie, in how she's able to cope with having sex with a man she doesn't love, saying, I'll just close my eyes and think, what a nice easy way to get a new dress.
Oh yeah, but you're not focusing on the fact that she said easy, are you? No, you're focusing on the fact that she closed her eyes. But she said it was easy. I mean, what point are you failing to make with this completely irrelevant quote?
This notion that sex work in Hong Kong was the most prosperous way women could earn money...
Where did you dig that from? It is one way in most nations of making a lot of money. I mean, in Cambodia, the average monthly wage for a woman working is about $150 to $200 a month. And that's usually working 6 days a week, sometimes 7. And you can make that in about an hour and a half dancing on a pole. You can make that in 20 minutes sex working. Yeah, awful.
Was so deeply rooted, during a 1970s pay dispute in a wig factory, the women workers were told, if you're all so money conscious, why don't you become bar girls? As so-called more respectable forms of employment would always be financially limited for them. This left Hong Kong women in a lose-lose situation.
Oh, really? Really? Have you ever been with a sex worker? I'm guessing no. I'm with one now. I mean, she stopped being a sex worker because we fell in love. But she was. 5 years we've been together. I had a 9-year romance with a Thai sex worker who's no longer a sex worker. She's got 3 of her own shops now. So this is really lose-lose. This is lose-lose.
Where they could either be unrespectably poor in a respectful job or lifestyle, or financially comfortable in an unrespectful job or lifestyle. Nevertheless,
Well, I mean, he's gone so off point here. I mean, that you can say that about any, that's the same with crime. That's the same with dealing drugs. So what? What's this got to do with tropes of Asian women in cinema and the World of Suzie Wong?
the culture of Hong Kong being a commercial playground full of available Asian women was not exclusive to British men, but white men from all over, and many would even develop savvy systems of knowing where to go and what to avoid.
Oh, right, I'm done with this, because this is just becoming repetitive and stupid. What? All those evil white men would realise how to do what they wanted to do in life without getting mugged, ripped off, or wasting time. Evil. I'll leave a link to the whole video in the description, but nonsense. It just sickens me, this stuff, because it's so... the whole analysis is so weak and fragile, and just doesn't stand up to, I've hardly torn it apart. I didn't need to. Just a superficial scratch of the surface of all this Orientalism mumbo jumbo. It just doesn't hold up. It makes no sense. Ta-da!